Hello everyone and welcome back. When you think of that magnificently turbulent Three Kingdoms era, what is the very first image that flashes through your mind? Perhaps it is the eternal dominance of Cao Cao, the infamous hero of chaos, standing tall with his spear, reciting powerful poetry with unmatched ambition. Or maybe it is the unparalleled wisdom of Zhuge Liang, the devoted strategist who dedicated his life to his state, calmly waving his iconic feather fan. Perhaps it is the awe-inspiring martial prowess of Guan Yu, the revered god of war wielding his legendary blade. At first glance, this historical tapestry seems reserved for geniuses, fearless heroes and the passionate blood-pumping clashes of epic legends, but today I want to ask you a blunt and crucial question. After a century of relentless earth-shattering chaos, when the dust settled, who was the absolute victor? Feel free to drop your thoughts in the comments below. The truth actually might deeply surprise you. The ultimate prize of this struggle didn't go to Cao Wei, nor did it fall to the proud Shu Han regime, who proudly proclaimed themselves the sole legitimate heir, and it certainly wasn't claimed by the Eastern Wu dynasty, clinging to its territorial corner in the south. In a shocking twist of fate, the ultimate prize fell elsewhere, directly into the lap of a family lurking in the shadows. It fell directly to the quietly lurking Sima clan, and the absolute protagonist of our video today is the very man who laid the impregnable groundwork for this family to successfully usurp both Wei and Han. He is unequivocally the ultimate Grandmaster of endurance and patience, a strategic mastermind whose depths were impossible to fathom. We are talking about the infamous Sima Yi. Historically, opinions regarding Sima Yi are incredibly polarized, swinging wildly between two absolute extremes. Some scholars revere him as a supremely devoted statesman, loyal minister who exhausted his energies for 3 generations, assisting the Cao Wei rulers with unwavering dedication. Yet others point a condemning finger directly at him, branding him the absolute greatest traitor and hypocrite, arguing that from the very first day he stepped out, he harbored sinister ambitions and a deeply treacherous heart. So what is the actual reality here? Was his life defined by loyalty or unparalleled treachery? How did a man made of mere mortal flesh and blood manage to single-handedly outlive the formidable warlord Cao Cao, outlast the brilliant intellectual genius Zhuge Liang, and even survive 3 entire generations of his own overlords, ultimately pulling off an unbelievable history-altering reversal? Today let's peel back the heavy, shrouded layers of mist and dive deep into the extremely patient, yet ruthless life, the bloody legendary life of Sima Yi. If you enjoy this kind of hardcore historical content, make sure to hit that like button first, and let's continue unraveling this fascinating narrative. First, let's carefully examine the background of this historical titan. Sima Yi hailed from Wen County in the Hebei Commandery, a region we know today as modern Wen County. Make no mistake, story is not a rags to riches tale. He was no grassroots commoner clawing his way up. He was born into genuine aristocracy, a highly respected noble family of immense wealth and influence. His ancestors were highly decorated generals during the Han dynasty, and his father held the immensely powerful position of intendant. Raised in an affluent household where privilege was abundant, Sima Yi received the absolute best elite education available. How do ancient historical records describe him during his youth? They say he possessed extraordinary character from a young age, brilliant and full of grand strategies. Unlike the typical hot-blooded, ambitious youths of his day, who were eager to make a name on the battlefield, the talented young Sima Yi was in no rush whatsoever. When Cao Cao was rapidly expanding across the northern plains, he heard of Sima Yi's stellar reputation, and specifically dispatched envoys to recruit the young scholar. Care to guess how Sima Yi responded to this opportunity? He actually chose to completely fake an illness. He publicly broadcasted that he suffered from severe wind dampness. Essentially, he pretended to be paralyzed by a stroke, unable to walk, and incapable of his basic daily needs. Why would he go to such extreme lengths for theater? Because at that time, Cao Cao's reputation was highly controversial, especially among the educated aristocratic literati class. Sima Yi, being an exceptionally shrewd and calculating man, was coldly observing the political landscape before making his move. But Cao Cao was absolutely no ordinary man. He was a generational warlord, notoriously suspicious and impossible to fool. In the dead of night, Cao Cao dispatched an assassin to directly probe the young scholar's defenses. The assassin silently infiltrated Sima Yi's bedchamber, drew a cold gleaming blade, and pressed it to his throat. An ordinary person would have been terrified out of their wits, likely wetting themselves in sheer panic, but Sima Yi just lay there stiff as a board. He didn't flinch, and he didn't even blink an eyelid. This astonishing, inhuman composure and flawless acting performance would undoubtedly win him an Oscar for Best Actor. It wasn't until much later, when Cao Cao seized power and officially became the imperial chancellor, that he issued a chilling cold-blooded ultimatum: if he declines again, arrest him and throw him in prison. Carefully assessing the inescapable shifting tides of power, Sima Yi finally relented, emerging from his long isolation to become a high-ranking employee within the Cadou Empire. Cao Cao possessed an incredibly sharp predatory intuition. He quickly realized Sima Yi was no ordinary subordinate. Historical texts vividly record a highly unsettling physical trait, a peculiar quirk known as the wolf's backward glance. He possessed the eerie ability to turn his head completely backwards, looking directly behind him, while keeping his shoulders perfectly rigid. To verify this disturbing rumor, Cao Cao set a trap slightly ahead of Sima Yi and shouted his name. Operating purely on instinct, Sima Yi whipped his head around. His body remained unmoving, but his face locked eyes with his lord. In that brief glance, Cao Cao saw a bone-deep coldness, along with a terrifying boundless ambition. Seeing this, Cao Cao's heart skipped a beat in alarm. He later issued a prophetic warning to his heir. Sima Yi is not a man who will forever serve you. He will inevitably interfere in our family's affairs. The core meaning of this was crystal clear. This man would never be content remaining beneath others. He would one day inevitably disrupt the Xiao family's grip. This was the defining impression Sima Yi left on history: deeply hidden, profoundly dangerous, and heavily guarded against. Faced with Cao Cao's relentless suspicion and defensive measures, Sima Yi demonstrated an unmatched survival intelligence. He intimately understood the profound danger of the ancient proverb that accompanying a monarch is like accompanying a hungry tiger. Consequently, he decisively chose the smartest and safest path forward, keeping a tremendously low profile and executing high-quality work and securely attaching himself to the rising political star, Cao Pi. If we were forced to summarize his monumental lifelong achievements, they would simply be cultivating statecraft and repelling external threats. Let's first thoroughly discuss his internal governance. Many mistakenly believe he was merely a general excelling at war. In reality, he was far more than a brilliant tactician. He was an absolutely outstanding statesman and a gifted economist. During the reigns of Cao Pi and Emperor Ming of Wei, Sima Yi aggressively expanded the military and civilian agricultural colonies, implementing these massive systems throughout the vast Tao territories. In simple terms, essentially mobilized the army and civilian populace, forcing them to engage in massive coordinated agricultural production. When you hold grain securely in your hands, panic leaves your heart. Furthermore, he personally planned, directed massive water conservancy projects, like the excavation of the transformative Changguo Canal. Through these brilliant initiatives, he forcibly transformed the Central Plains, a land left barren and depopulated by decades of warfare, turning it into a flourishing, highly productive breadbasket. My friends, warfare is fundamentally a grueling contest of logistics. It always comes down to brutal resource management. Thanks to the unshakable economic foundation Sima Yi personally built, the state of Kaowei was eventually able to crush its rivals, completely defeating Shu Han and Eastern Wu in national strength. This perfectly explains Zhuge Liang's highly romanticized northern expeditions. He was constantly forced to retreat in bitter frustration, always failing simply due to a lack of food supplies. Meanwhile, Sima Yi could sit back comfortably and bleed his enemy dry, because Sima Yi had mountains of grain waiting in his granaries. Now, let's turn our attention to his military prowess. His tactical brilliance undoubtedly represents the absolute zenith, unquestioned ceiling of military capability in the Three Kingdoms. He orchestrated a lightning-fast campaign to capture Meng Da within days. At the time, Meng Da was a turncoat general of Shu Han. He was plotting to raise the banner of rebellion in Wencheng. Meng Da had calculated his odds beautifully. In his own mind, he assumed Sima Yi would first send messengers to the capital, request official imperial permission to mobilize troops to crush him. Assuming bureaucratic back and forth would take at least a month. The result, Sima Yi completely bypassed the red tape, executing a domineering and highly illegal act. First maneuver, the Cao Wei army marched with terrifying velocity, arriving at the walls of Wenchong in a mere 8 days, like an unstoppable force descending directly from the heavens. Within a shockingly brief span of just 16 days, they utterly annihilated the traitor Meng Da, the ancient military principle. That speed is the essence of war. It was flawlessly and terrifyingly embodied by Sima Yi. Even in his twilight years, he remained a formidable force. With the unstoppable momentum of a thunderbolt, he marched north to completely crush the rebellion in the freezing Liaodong region. Amidst brutally harsh weather, blinding snow and ice, Sima Yi maneuvered his troops with godlike precision, smashed through the heavy defenses of Xiangping City, and ordered a merciless massacre of the trapped rebel forces. This devastating campaign permanently eradicated a massive lingering threat, a threat that had plagued the northeastern frontier for years. Of course, the most glorious military achievement of his life, the singular event that would cement his legacy for all eternity, his unbreakable defense against Zhuge Liang's relentless northern expeditions. Facing Zhuge Liang, a man whose intellect bordered on the supernatural with endless strategic tricks, Sima Yi didn't blindly clash head on. Instead, he adopted the most primitive yet absolutely fatal strategy, fortifying the defenses, clearing the fields, and refusing to battle. He sat in his command tent, as immovable as a mountain, with only one thought echoing endlessly in his mind: I don't care if you curse me from outside the gates. Don't care if you send me women's clothing, intentionally trying to humiliate my manhood. I simply will not march. How could a proud military commander endure such public disgrace? Because his venomously sharp eyes saw Zhuge Liang's fatal vulnerability. The Shu army had marched vast distances, stretching their supplies. Their supply lines simply could not survive a protracted war. Utilizing an extreme level of patience that ordinary men couldn't fathom, Sima Yi literally stalled the brilliant genius Zhuge Liang until he died of sheer exhaustion on the Wujiang plains. Throughout his long tenure assisting 3 generations of rulers, Sima Yi amassed an awe-inspiring, impeccable military record. He evolved into the unshakable pillar of the Cao Wei Empire, naturally ascending to the role of the absolute elder statesman. If his dramatic story had simply concluded right here, he would have gone down as a generational paragon of loyalty, revered and worshipped by thousands, much like his rival Zhuge Liang. However, the most thrilling twists occur in the final chapters. The next story completely altered the trajectory of the 3 kingdoms, finally exposing the terrifyingly sharp, venomous fangs of Sima Yi, fangs he had kept meticulously hidden for his entire life. This is the famously recognized incident at Gaoping Tombs. In the year 239 AD, Emperor Ming of Wei passed away, leaving behind a highly vulnerable 8-year-old child emperor. On his deathbed, he entrusted supreme power to 2 men, Tao Shuang, the grand general from the imperial clan, and Sima Yi, the deeply respected elder statesman. However, Cao Shuang was an exceptionally arrogant and incompetent playboy. Very moment he seized power, he utilized his authority to frantically and ruthlessly suppress the aging Sima Yi. Employing a classic maneuver of a promotion hiding a demotion, he elevated Sima Yi to the prestigious role of Grand Tutor, a position overflowing with honor, but devoid of real power. Sima Yi effectively sidelined and neutralized. Cao Shuang monopolized the government and appointed his own cronies, living a life of extreme stomach turning extravagance and corruption. Faced with these aggressive tactics, how did Sima Yi react? His military command was gone, but he didn't lash out. Certainly didn't stage a desperate, doomed rebellion. Instead, he deployed the ultimate weapon he was most skilled at, the devastating weapon of pure, unadulterated endurance. My friends, Sima Yi was nearly 70 years old. Yet, he claimed to be gravely ill and stopped attending court. He locked himself away in his mansion, biding his time, and he hid there waiting patiently for 10 full years. Cao Shuang, however, felt a lingering and guilty paranoia. To test if Sima Yi was genuinely on death's door, he dispatched his trusted confidant to visit the Sima residence, under the clever guise of paying his final respects. What unfolded next stands as a flawless acting masterclass. When Li Sheng stepped into Sima Yi's quiet bedchamber, he saw the old man trembling, leaning against the bedframe. His hair was a disheveled mess, his appearance incredibly decrepit. 2 maidservants were attempting to feed him porridge, but Sima Yi couldn't even manage to hold the bowl steady. The watery gruel spilled down his chin, soaking his clothes. Lai Sheng approached and spoke with deep respect. Grand Tutor, I have been appointed as Inspector of Benzhou, and I have come to bid you a final farewell. Sima Yi immediately launched into his act of playing. Deaf panting heavily, he mumbled incoherently about the wrong province. Oh, you are going to Bingzhou, near the barbarian territories. You must be very, very careful over there. Lai Sheng quickly raised his voice to correct him. Grand Tutor, it is Benzhou, not Bingzhou. But Sima Yi continued his masterful feint. Confusion. Oh, you just returned from Bingzhou. Finally squeezing a few muddy geriatric tears from his eyes, Sima Yi desperately grasped his hands, wailed miserably, I am dying, my time on earth is almost up. My two useless, disappointing sons, Sima Shi and Sima Zhao, I entrust them entirely to your care, General. Upon returning, Li Sheng joyfully reported back to his master rest. Assured my lord that old fossil Sima Yi is a walking corpse. His spirit has left his body, and he is clinging to his final breath. He is absolutely nothing to worry about. Hearing this, Cao Shuang completely dropped every last ounce of his guard. However, even in his wildest dreams, Cao Shuang could never have imagined, while he was basking in arrogant triumph, believing the world was at peace, that very same dying old man couldn't even hold a bowl of porridge. Yet he secretly raised, funded, and trained 3,000 elite death squads, all hidden quietly in the shadows. In 249 AD, the golden opportunity suppressed for a decade finally arrived. Cao Shuang was accompanied by the child emperor and his trusted cronies. They swaggered confidently out of the capital city of Luoyang to pay respects at the late emperor's ancestral tombs at Gaping. In that exact moment, the military defenses of Luoyang were completely hollowed out. The very second Cao Shuang's entourage cleared the city gates, Sima Yi erupted like a ferocious tiger that had lain dormant. The man supposedly drawing his last breath on his deathbed was back at 70 years of age. He strapped on his cold, unyielding iron armor. The senility and confusion completely vanished from his eyes, replaced solely by a chilling, blood-curdling aura of murderous intent. Moving with the speed and ferocity of lightning, he swiftly commanded his hidden 3,000 death-sworn soldiers. They seized total control of Luoyang's armories and every major city gate. Subsequently, using the absolute authority of Empress Dowager Guo, he decisively issued an edict stripping Cao Shuang of his ranks and powers. Far away at the Gaping tombs, Cao Shuang was utterly paralyzed with terror upon receiving news of the sudden military coup back in Luoyang. At this highly critical juncture, the Minister of Agriculture desperately pleaded. He urged Cao Shuang to take the emperor to Xuchang and use the absolute authority of the Son of Heaven to summon the world's armies, crush Sima Yi's rebellion. But Cao Shuang was a coward and an incompetent fool. To his core, he simply could not bear to part with his luxurious lifestyle. He refused to abandon his immense wealth back in Luoyang. Sima Yi perfectly grasped this fatal character flaw. He sent an envoy who pointed to the Luo River and swore an oath, as long as you surrender your military command, I guarantee you will retain your immense wealth and status for life. The incredibly foolish Cao Shuang actually believed him. He obediently handed over all of his military seals. And what was the ultimate result of this surrender? The very moment Sima Yi secured absolute power, he mercilessly flipped the script, revealing his most cold-blooded nature. Without a moment's hesitation, he charged Cao Shuang with treason. Not only did he brutally execute Cao Shuang, he sadistically exterminated his entire extended family across 3 generations. Sima Yi didn't even spare the political advisors and retainers, the very people who had once counseled the foolish Cao Shuang. This horrific, earth-shattering purge claimed the lives of over 5,000 people. At the advanced age of 70, Sima Yi utilized a bloody coup characterized by extreme patience and extreme viciousness to completely usurp the rivers and mountains of the Cao Empire. He spent 10 years patiently sharpening his sword, only to violently swing it in a single, blinding flash of lightning. Just 2 short years after the Gaping tombs incident, in 251 AD, the 73-year-old Sima Yi passed away from illness. Though his life ended, he had already paved the road to supreme power, securing absolute rule for his descendants, using an ocean of blood. Shortly thereafter, his grandson forced the Wei emperor to abdicate, formally establishing the Jing dynasty and realizing the grand vision, unifying the fractured realm and bringing the 3 kingdoms to a close. Looking back at Sima Yi's tumultuous, roller coaster life, how should we ultimately evaluate him? Some point at his spine and violently curse him as a treacherous minister. Shameless usurper who shattered the fundamental moral bottom line, treating the solemn oath he swore by the Luo River like a child's game. His cold-blooded ruthlessness still sends profound shivers down the spines of countless historians who study his life today, yet we absolutely cannot deny he was a man of supreme intellect, a true unmatched grandmaster of survival in an era defined by chaos. In this cruel cannibalistic era where men ate men, walked the path of the hegemon, Liu Bei walked the path of benevolence, Zhuge Liang walked the path of the righteous king, but Sima Yi forged an utterly unique path of his own, the way of the ninja, the ultimate path of supreme endurance. Just look back at his incredible life. He endured the relentless suspicion of the warlord Cao Cao. He endured the psychological tests of his master Cao Pi, endured the brilliant military campaigns of the genius Zhuge Liang. He endured the political suppression of the arrogant Tao Shuang. He was like a deadly calculated apex predator, perpetually lurking in the deepest, darkest abyss. Only when everyone was convinced he was old, useless, and no longer a threat, did he violently lunge forward to deliver the final, fatal strike. Many lament that Sima Yi was the hero who finally defeated the dragon, but in the end, terrifying scales grew upon his own flesh, and he transformed into the most terrifying tyrannical dragon of them all. He spent his entire life trying to prove his unwavering loyalty, yet in his final moments, personally smashed that monument of loyalty, the very monument he had painstakingly built over a lifetime. He seized the world, but in doing so, tore open a bloody prologue to the horrific eras of the 8 princes and the 5 barbarians. The life of Sima Yi was a life of extreme, unimaginable forbearance. It was a life of frantic, calculated scheming, and a profoundly lonely life lived at the terrifying summit of power. His story cruelly teaches us a fundamental truth. In the ultimate Game of Thrones, there is never a true distinction between right and wrong. There is only the final verdict of winning and losing. Sometimes the one who laughs last and laughs the absolute sweetest is not the one with the strongest martial prowess or highest IQ. It is the one who can endure the most, the one who can figure out how to simply stay alive against all odds. This is Sima Yi, a man whose name makes people shudder in fear, yet compels them to bow in profound admiration. As the ultimate victor of the 3 kingdoms, to my friends watching behind the screen, having heard today's epic story, do you believe Sima Yi was a misunderstood loyalist, generational loyalist who suffered great injustice, or a chaotic traitor who finally revealed his true villainous colors? If you were in his shoes, facing Cao Shuang's relentless pressure, facing his mortal threats, what choice would you have made? I welcome you to leave your thoughts in the comment section below, so we can discuss it together. I will see you in the next episode. Explore another fascinating historical figure.